Imagine you're a Cleveland Browns fan. You've seen the carousel. You've sat through the press conferences that promised everything and delivered nothing. You've watched quarterbacks get destroyed behind offensive lines that looked like they were assembled the morning of the game. You've been patient, maybe too patient. And then one Tuesday, the news drops, and for the first time in a long time, it doesn't hurt. This is that Tuesday. The Cleveland Browns have officially acquired right tackle Titus Howard from the Houston Texans. And before you scroll past that headline, thinking it's just another roster shuffle, another name swapped for another name, stop. Because this deal is layered. This deal is deliberate. And this deal tells a story about where this franchise is going that every single Browns fan needs to hear from beginning to end. Let's set the table. Cleveland sends Houston a 2026 fifth-round pick, the same pick they got from the Raiders in the Kenny Pickett trade. By the way, we'll circle back to that, and in return they get Howard. But the trade itself is almost secondary to what came attached to it. Because the moment Howard landed in Cleveland, the Browns locked him up immediately. 3 years, $63 million. $45 million in new guaranteed money, locked in through 2028. That's not a rental. That's not let's see how this works out. That is a front office looking their fan base dead in the eye and saying we are building something real and we are building it right now. Think about what that number means in the context of this league. $63 million is a statement. It's a franchise putting its financial credibility on the line for a single player. In a salary cap world where one bad contract can cripple you for 4 years, you don't hand out that kind of money unless you have a clear vision. And the Cleveland Browns, under Andrew Berry, apparently have a very clear vision. So who is Titus Howard, and why does he deserve that kind of investment? Because that's the right question. Anyone can throw money at a problem. The art is in throwing it at the right solution. Howard ranks 6th in pass blocking efficiency across the entire NFL over the last 2 seasons. 6th in the whole league. He started all 16 games in each of those seasons, too. Not 14. Not 12 with a soft tissue injury excuse buried in the injury report. All 16 both years. That's not a guy you luck into. That's a guy you go and get. And the Browns needed to go get somebody. Because let's be brutally honest about what happened up front last season. It was a disaster. Quarterbacks were under pressure before they could even finish their drop back. The running game had no crease to work with. The offense was playing scared because the protection was unreliable, and when your offense is playing scared, everything breaks down. You can have elite skill players on the outside. You can have a scheming genius calling plays from the booth. None of it matters if the 5 guys up front can't buy your quarterback 2.5 seconds of clean air. The offensive line is the engine. Everything else is the body of the car. You can paint it whatever color you want. You can put the nicest interior in the world inside it. But if the engine is misfiring, you're not going anywhere. The Browns knew their engine was misfiring. They knew it publicly, painfully, for multiple seasons. The difference between knowing a problem exists and actually solving it, that's where organizations separate themselves. That's where contenders pull away from pretenders. And this move is Andrew Berry saying, we are not pretenders anymore. Now here's where the story gets genuinely fascinating. When a team spends this kind of money on pass protection specifically, not a skill position, not a flashy weapon, they're telling you their offensive philosophy in no uncertain terms. They are going to throw the football. They are committed to protecting the pocket. They are building an environment where a young quarterback can breathe, process, develop, and thrive. And who is that young quarterback? Who is this entire operation quietly being constructed around? Shedeur Sanders. That's who. The kid out of Colorado. The son of a legend, yes, but more importantly, a prospect with a natural feel for the game that you simply cannot coach. Elite pocket presence. Anticipation throws. The kind of composure in a loud stadium that makes you raise an eyebrow and wonder if he's even aware the game is moving at full speed. He has the tools. He has the mentality. What he hasn't had, what no quarterback can survive without, is protection. And now the Browns are giving him exactly that. Too many organizations in this league draft a talented young quarterback and throw him directly into a broken situation. Bad line. No weapons. Poor scheme fit. And then 2 years later they're calling it a bust. They're moving on. They're starting the search over. It's a cycle that destroys franchises and careers simultaneously. Cleveland is choosing a different approach. They are building the house before they move the quarterback in. They're pouring the foundation, laying the framing, making sure the structure is sound, and then they'll hand Shedeur the keys. That's how you develop a franchise quarterback. That's how you give a young man a real chance. Now, let's talk about the chess game happening in the background. Because this front office deserves credit not just for what they did, but for how they did it. The 5th-round pick that went to Houston? That came from Las Vegas in the Kenny Pickett trade. Think about that chain for a second. Cleveland moved Kenny Pickett to the Raiders, received draft capital in return, and then used that capital to acquire a $63 million starting right tackle. They converted a backup quarterback into a franchise cornerstone on the offensive line. That is not luck. That is asset management at the highest level. That is a front office playing the long game while everyone else is reacting to the news cycle. And Houston? They're not losing sleep over this either. This was a calculated decision on their end. They cleared cap room, absorbed the dead money, and freed up space to do what they really want to do, pay C.J. Stroud. A quarterback who might be one of the 5 best in this league already, and is only going to get better. You can't fault that math. You can't fault either side of this deal, honestly. Both teams got exactly what they needed. That's a rare thing in the NFL. Let's also address the elephant in the room, because we'd be doing you a disservice if we didn't. Deshaun Watson is still on the books. That contract is still there. That situation is still complicated in ways that don't resolve themselves overnight. But here's the thing, the Browns did not make this move for Deshaun Watson. They made this move for the future. They made this move for whoever is going to be their answer at quarterback for the next decade. And everything, the investment, the timeline, the philosophy being laid out piece by piece this offseason, points toward Shedeur Sanders being that guy. You don't spend $45 million in guaranteed money on pass protection for a quarterback you're unsure about. Before we go any further, there's something that needs to be said, and it has nothing to do with football. Dominic Ponder, a former Colorado teammate of Shedeur Sanders, a young man who was part of that Buffalo's locker room, who pushed Shedeur on the field and stood beside him off it, he was killed in a car accident. He was young. He had everything in front of him. Shedeur posted about it. The Boulder community is grieving. And we should hold that weight for a moment because these are real people with real lives that extend far beyond the game. Football gives us joy. It gives us community. It gives us something to root for. But it is not the most important thing. Life is. The people we love are. So to the Ponder family, you are in our hearts. We are thinking about you. And we hope you feel the support of a community that cares. Back to Cleveland. Because the road ahead, it actually looks different now than it did a year ago. The 2025 season was hard to watch. The offense was inconsistent. The line was a liability. The questions about direction and leadership never fully went away. But this offseason, something has shifted. There's an intentionality to the moves being made that wasn't there before. Trading for Howard and immediately extending him through 2028 tells you the front office isn't patching holes anymore. They're building walls. And more moves are coming. You can feel it. More offensive line depth. Weapons added through the draft to grow alongside a young quarterback who deserves real support. This is how rosters are built that actually compete, not in one giant swing, but in a series of smart, connected decisions that compound over time. Andrew Berry deserves real credit here. In a league that rewards panic and punishes patience, the Browns are playing it straight. They're thinking about 2027. They're thinking about 2028. They're not chasing a headline. They're constructing a contender. And that is rare. That is genuinely rare. If you've been a Browns fan long enough to have scar tissue from this franchise, and if you're here watching this, you probably do, this is the kind of move you've been waiting for. Not a splashy receiver signing that pops on Twitter for 24 hours. Not a name you recognize from someone else's glory years. A foundational move. A real, committed, financially serious investment in the infrastructure of a winning offense. $63 million and 3 years of clarity at right tackle. That's something to hold on to. If this video brought you up to speed on everything happening in Cleveland, do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to Browns Breakout, and drop your take in the comments. Do you think this is the move that finally starts the real build? Are there still gaps that have you nervous? Let's have that conversation because this offseason is only getting started, and if this first move is any preview of what's coming, is going to be one of the most interesting offseasons this city has seen in years. Hold your people close. Appreciate what you have. And we'll see you in the next one.